Hello everyone, it is TooAwesome here with another video. Now, I know I'm a little late with this one, but I finally got around to watching Loki. So what better time for a review? So without further ado, let's review Marvel's newest show, Loki. Loki is an action-adventure, crime thriller, fantasy procedural drama first aired on June 9th of 2021. Now, I won't lie, I was and still am starting to get a little tired of Marvel. Now, that is not something I thought I would ever say. Being such a large Marvel fan myself and just how much I enjoyed and still enjoy the Marvel properties, it's weird for me to say that. But here I am saying it. Marvel is putting out too many projects. I'm sorry, but they need to tone it down because I'm starting to lose my grip on the series and my motivation as a whole to keep up is starting to dwindle. Don't get me wrong, I want to see more from Marvel, but maybe not as much as they are putting out. Maybe a show every 4 months and a movie every 6 or something? I don't know the specifics of how the schedule is now, but it feels like a lot more than what I mentioned. That on top of me just being overall behind in watching basically everything I need to, had me putting off Loki. But it also just wasn't piquing my interest. And no, I don't know anything about the show going in, but the fact that there was yet another Marvel show I had to binge on top of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which feels like it happened not all that long ago, had me kind of pushed away from this project. But I went on a road trip with my family and finally had that free space opened up for me to watch. And so I did. All of it in a single day. And honestly, it was pretty good. Like, this is what Marvel could and should be doing. I won't lie, it had its issues, which I will go into later, but at least the ideas present were really cool. Like, I love this stuff, I'm not kidding. Marvel is now at the point where they have the power and credibility to use whatever IPs and ideas they want to, no matter how crazy or weird. And I'm super glad they are starting to do some really cool stuff with it. Like, don't get me wrong, I actually like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier a lot more than a vast amount of people, but I will say that the nitty-gritty superhero secret agent type stories are getting a little old. It's sort of the reason why I haven't seen Black Widow yet. I'm just not all that interested anymore. I want to see some cooler and more creative stuff we haven't seen before. I feel like Wandavision was a great example. While it did fall into some Marvel tropes and had some lows overall, I thought it was really good. Did it have some more potential? Yeah. But it was a step in the right direction, and that's exactly how I feel Loki is as well, except it steps more into the wackier stuff than WandaVision did, which is great. But as great as the ideas present in Loki are, the story itself feels a little incomplete. Now, I'm usually pretty good at pinpointing why that is, but honestly, here I can't. I mean, the story beats are all there. It takes its time developing certain characters really well, like Loki or Moebius. The storylines lead into one another and are wrapped up pretty well. So I'm honestly just confused on why I'm stuck here with this feeling. I mean, the pacing was a little slow in certain sections, but for the most part, I actually really liked those scenes, because a majority of it was just characters talking or we the audience experiencing or witnessing Loki's inner turmoil and transformation, because we are following Loki, who just tried to take over New York, not the one we saw in Ragnarok or Infinity War. So going over all his emotions and almost a deep dive into his character is totally necessary and honestly really well done in a super believable way. So how can I say all these great things yet still feel like there should have been more? At first, I thought it had something to do with setting up these really big story beats and pulling major ideas from the comics and then flipping them on their head, but yet again, I actually really liked that and thought it was pretty good fake out. So why do I feel like this? I mean, the show dealt with such great ideas, set up so much, yet doesn't reach the full potential I can see from this. It feels like it's been set on the verge of greatness, and I can taste it. I feel like Marvel can do so much more with these great ideas and stories that people don't realize, and they're just giving them credit for using the story beats at all. And I mean, it is a step in the right direction, but it also doesn't really do anything super unexpected, which may be strange to hear since it was such a wacky show, but it honestly just hit all the story beats it needed to. And besides one fake out, it didn't really do anything something too unexpected for me, which is almost the opposite of Wandavision. At least with that show, and especially towards the beginning, I was so on edge and interested in just what was happening, and I honestly had no idea where the story could go. And comparing that to Loki, it almost seems like Loki played it a little safe, with all the story beats and big reveals being hit, but nothing exceeded what I thought would happen. It felt like the type of story where you may not know where or what will happen next, but when the setups for those future events were introduced, you could almost see where it would end. Which is fine, nothing too wrong with that, and I should be happy for it being good, but I feel like they could have done more. More twists, wackier ideas, more episodes, more time devoted to it. Because as a whole, it has its places for slower paced scenes, but the show does bounce around quite a bit, so maybe more time at each of these locations would have helped. However, I heard this is only the first part of the season, so this story will be getting a part 2, which is a first for any of these new gen Marvel shows. So maybe with this extended look into the story, it would help that feeling of wanting more, or the almost unfinished feeling that the show has. Now I realize I have spoken all this time but haven't really explained the story, with obviously no spoilers. So this show follows Loki right after the events of the first Avengers movie, with a little tie-in to Endgame with the whole time traveling for the stones. So here, while traveling back for the stones, the mission is compromised and the Tesseract ends up in the hands of Loki, and he uses it to escape. Now this isn't supposed to happen and subsequently causes a new branch in the MCU timeline. Now, since this wasn't supposed to happen, the TVA gets involved, which stands for the Time Variance Authority. Now, they get a hold of Loki and set the entire series into motion. Following Loki, we get some really great and believable development for him throughout the entire series. I mean, Tom Hiddleston knocked his performance out of the park, and I really love the development as a whole for Loki. I mean, he was never anywhere near a favorite character of mine, but after this show, I was actually quite fond of him. He's actually, up there now. And like previously mentioned before, I love the ideas present in this show, and the TVA is one of them. I found it such a cool concept and was so excited when Marvel actually started to go over something so out of the box like this in the MCU. Plus, the whole TVA headquarters was such a cool location, and honestly had such an interesting feel to it. It was so retro yet futuristic, it was awesome. I also really liked a few other locations, but even mentioning them would kind of be spoilers, but both showed up towards the end of the show, if that gives you any clues, and I thought they were both super interesting, especially the final place. It was really cool, and it felt like something straight out of the comics. Talking about straight out of the comics, there was a Thanos copter reference in here, which I thought was really funny. Also, thinking back, the music was actually pretty good. Especially for Marvel, most of the time their tracks don't really stick with me, but the score here was very nice. Especially the whole intro song slash theme, it's been stuck in my head, as funny as that sounds. I will admit though, the fights aren't the greatest. I could even go as far as to say they are kind of bad and clunky. They just look weird sometimes and honestly sort of took away from the whole experience for me. I know a lot of people will say I'm crazy for that, but I would much rather have some more scenes in the TVA talking than these awkward fight scenes. The choreography just wasn't that good, and I don't really even expect much from Marvel going in, especially with hand-to-hand choreography, let alone for a TV show, but it actually may be the worst in the entire MCU, at least in my opinion. Also, the CGI wasn't the greatest. I will give this one a pass, since it is a TV show, and by TV standards, it's pretty good. But especially on that one planet, it didn't look the best. Now, I know I mentioned this before, but I really think I should give it more of a dedicated section, because the acting was seriously really, really good. I especially loved Owen Wilson as Moebius. He nailed that performance and made every scene he was in so much better. And like I said before, Tom Hiddleston's performance as Loki was amazing. The two of them really bring their characters to life. Overall, I thought Loki was good, but not as good as many people made it out to be. I really loved the ideas present, however, I feel like they could have done so much more with them. For such out-of-the-box ideas, I feel like the show just played it relatively safe. If you're gonna mold your story around some truly out-of-the-box ideas, you have to follow it up with using out-of-the-box storylines. Or that's at least what I hoped would have happened. But hey, it's really not that bad. I actually did really enjoy it. I mean, I did binge it all in a single day, and it actually kept me really entertained the whole way through. But not really to an overly extent, like say Wandavision did for me in the first half, but it does open up the Marvel Cinematic Universe to do many cool things in the future, which is great. And I'm pretty sure this sets up Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, so I believe the MCU is headed in a very fun and interesting direction. Because I feel like we are finally moving past the whole Infinity Stone thing. We've done that, told those stories, and in a way, this show almost shows us how Marvel feels about that whole storyline at present. I mean, the stones were basically used as jokes here, and I mean, they kinda are stripped of any of their power in a literal or figurative sense. But I will give credit where credit is due. I love Marvel leaning into their more wacky and strange side. I especially love many of those stories in the comics, so bringing up ideas closer along those lines and seeming to start to distance yourself, if it be slowly, from those nitty-gritty, semi-bland superhero stories is a good step in the right direction. So I give major props to Marvel, and I would like to at least give the show an extra half a point just for trying some new stuff. And I know I just complained about people doing that, but hey, I feel like the current score would have been just a little too low. Plus, the show was good, nothing super crazy or amazing, but I still did enjoy it. So Loki gets a slightly generous 7.5 out of 10. Definitely is setting up Marvel to be really interesting again. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments of your own, make sure to leave them down below. Trust me, I read them. Also, look at this graph. Okay. But as always, stay awesome, too awesome. Thanks for watching.